The galaxy was once a place of peace, a place where dozens of intelligent species worked together for a common purpose under the leadership of the Galactic Council. But as the years passed, cracks started to form in the once unshakable unity. The Council, which had always been a symbol of stability, was now facing a crisis that would soon become the galaxy's greatest challenge. It began in the grand, glittering halls of the Galactic Council, the most powerful organization in the galaxy. Representatives from all the major species gathered for their weekly meeting, a place where decisions were made for the good of the entire galaxy. Species that had never gotten along had found common ground here, and the galaxy had thrived under their collective leadership. But today, things were different. The meeting hall was filled with an uneasy silence. The usual hum of conversation was replaced by a heavy atmosphere, like a storm was about to break. All eyes were on the human ambassador, Dr. Aidan Blackwell, a seasoned diplomat who had represented humanity for years. He had always been known for his calm demeanor and his unwavering dedication to the Council. But today, something was different. His usual confidence was replaced with a strange intensity. The other representatives, some from peaceful planets and others from powerful militaristic species, all watched him closely. Dr. Blackwell rose from his seat slowly. His dark eyes scanned the room, making contact with the faces of the other delegates, his gaze lingering just a moment longer on those he considered allies. Then he spoke, his voice calm but carrying an edge that sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. "We've seen enough," he said simply. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause. The other ambassadors exchanged uncertain glances. What did he mean by enough? Some thought he was talking about the endless debates that had been dragging on for weeks. Others suspected he was referring to the increasing tensions between species. But no one expected what came next. Humanity is leaving the Galactic Council. The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. It was impossible to believe. Humanity, the most influential member of the Council, leaving. The other species couldn't comprehend it. The Council had been their foundation, the reason they had survived the challenges of the galaxy for centuries. To leave now would be unthinkable. The room fell into shocked silence. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Then the murmurs began. Soft whispers, like the hum of a distant engine. Could it be true? Was it a bluff? Or had humanity truly made the decision to abandon the Council? One of the Council leaders, a tall, elegant alien with scales that shimmered in the dim light, stood up. "Ambassador Blackwell," she said, her voice trembling. "You cannot be serious. The Council has been the glue that held the galaxy together. If humanity leaves now, it will tear us apart. You know this." Blackwell did not flinch. The Council was supposed to be a beacon of unity, but all we've seen is corruption, failure, and indecision. You are unable to act when the galaxy needs you the most. Humanity can no longer stand by and watch as you bicker over insignificant matters while the universe burns. A murmur of disbelief spread across the room. The alien leader took a step forward, her face twisting with disbelief and frustration. "You cannot leave us," she said. "The galaxy needs your strength, your influence. Humanity cannot survive without the Council." But Blackwell's face remained hard, his jaw set. "We've been surviving fine without it. We can stand on our own. We are leaving. And there is nothing you can do to change that." The tension in the room reached a boiling point. Some species looked angry, others looked afraid. The idea of humanity leaving was incomprehensible. How could they do this? Humanity was the Council's strongest member, and without them, the balance would be shattered. Blackwell turned and motioned for his team to leave with him. As they walked out of the grand hall, whispers followed them. He had just made a decision that would change the entire galaxy. But did he fully understand the consequences of his actions? The answer to that question would only come with time. Outside the meeting chamber, the human ambassador's cold expression softened for a brief moment. There was a storm brewing in the galaxy, a storm that humanity was about to unleash. And for the first time in years, Blackwell felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of the Council's corruption had been lifted off his shoulders. Humanity was free, free to chart its own path. As he stepped into his ship, he looked out at the stars. The galaxy stretched out before him, vast and full of potential, but also full of danger. What had they just done? He didn't know. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. Back in the council chamber, chaos erupted. The other delegates tried to process what had just happened. Some were furious, others fearful. The council was crumbling. Without humanity, the balance of power was in question. And soon, the entire galaxy would feel the impact of this moment. As Blackwell's ship disappeared into the distance, the first signs of chaos began to ripple across the galaxy. And humanity was about to find out just how far its decision would reach. The galaxy, once calm and organized under the rule of the Galactic Council, was beginning to unravel. The immediate aftermath of humanity's shocking decision to leave the Council sent ripples of fear and confusion through every corner of space. On Earth, humanity's leaders gathered in secrecy, knowing that their bold move would change everything. But what was their true intention? Were they really abandoning the galaxy, or was this part of a bigger plan? As the first days passed, the truth became clear. This wasn't just a statement of defiance. It was the beginning of something much darker. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the power vacuum created by humanity's departure was felt almost immediately. The once unified species of the Council began to fracture, with alliances quickly falling apart. The Kravlak, a militaristic race from the edge of the galaxy, began sending threatening messages to their neighbors, claiming that the Council's failure to act had left them vulnerable. The peaceful Seraphi, a race known for their wisdom, began to worry about their future. Without humanity's support, they were exposed to threats they had never anticipated. As fear spread, whispers of war began to echo through every system. On the fringes of known space, chaos was beginning to erupt. Trade routes were interrupted, and transport ships started disappearing. No one knew who was behind it, but the timing seemed more than coincidental. The once protected systems of the Galactic Council were suddenly vulnerable, and in a way that hadn't been seen in centuries. The first skirmishes began, small, unorganized, but violent. Planetary defenses that had once been enough to keep invaders at bay now seemed inadequate, and at the center of it all, humanity remained silent. No one knew where they had gone or what they were planning. They had simply left, leaving the rest of the galaxy to pick up the pieces. In the Galactic Council's headquarters, the remaining members scrambled to find a way to restore order. A special emergency meeting was called, but it was clear from the moment the leaders gathered that they were out of their depth. Some of the older races, like the Vartok, who had always relied on the Council's wisdom, were growing desperate. The Vartok leader, an ancient being with shimmering skin, addressed the room with a voice full of dread. "Without humanity, the Council is nothing. We have no strength. We cannot stand alone. Who will protect us now?" The answer was unclear, and that uncertainty spread like wildfire. The situation grew worse with every passing hour. Smaller factions, seeing the Council's weakness, began to move. Some were desperate for resources, while others saw this as an opportunity to seize power. Without humanity's stabilizing influence, the galaxy was slipping into a spiral of fear and distrust. The once unthinkable idea that the galaxy could fall into a series of violent wars was becoming a reality, and it was happening faster than anyone had anticipated. Meanwhile, in the shadows, humanity's movements became more mysterious. The fleets that had once been part of the Council's unified forces were now scattered, each with a different mission, operating independently. Messages sent between Earth and the distant colonies were cryptic, giving no clear indication of what their next move would be. But there were rumors. Some said that humanity had been preparing for this moment long before they walked away from the Council. Others claimed they were gathering something, an ancient power that could tip the balance in their favor. But the truth was elusive. All anyone knew for certain was that humanity was not simply walking away from the chaos they had left behind. They were watching it unfold, waiting for the right moment to strike. As these events unfolded, a new and dangerous force began to rise on the horizon. The Tyrann, a mysterious and reclusive race that had remained largely neutral in galactic affairs, suddenly began to move. Their ships appeared in regions of space that had long been considered neutral, and their presence alone caused a wave of anxiety. Their intentions were unclear, but the fact that they had remained hidden for so long suggested something more was at play. Were they allies of humanity, or were they preparing to take advantage of the chaos that was spreading through the galaxy? In the midst of it all, the once stable peace that had existed under the Council seemed like a distant memory. The galaxy was on the brink of war, and no one knew which side humanity would take when the time came to choose. Were they truly standing by to let the galaxy burn, or had they planned something far more dangerous, something that would reshape the entire universe? One thing was certain: with humanity's departure, the galaxy had entered a new, unpredictable era. The struggle for power, survival, and control would now play out on a scale never seen before. And as tensions continued to rise, no one could say who would come out victorious. The fate of the galaxy, once firmly in the hands of the Galactic Council, was now in the hands of those who were willing to fight for it. And at the center of it all was the mysterious, unspoken role that humanity would play in the chaos that was now unfolding. The galaxy, now fractured by the shocking departure of humanity, began to spiral into chaos at a pace that no one had anticipated. The Galactic Council, once the symbol of unity and peace, was now a shadow of its former self. Its members, once eager to cooperate for the greater good, now found themselves in a desperate scramble for survival. Without humanity's military strength and diplomatic influence, the delicate balance of power that had existed for centuries was crumbling. The Vartok, once loyal allies of humanity, were the first to make their move. With the Council's authority weakened, they began to expand their territory, taking advantage of the growing uncertainty. The peaceful Sci-Fi, caught off guard by the Vartok's sudden aggression, found themselves in a desperate position. Their forces, though powerful in their own right, were not built for warfare, and the Vartok's expansion seemed unstoppable. The Sci-Fi sent an emergency plea to the Council, but no help came. The Council, paralyzed by infighting and fear, could not respond to the threat. Without humanity's support, they were powerless to act. In the midst of this chaos, strange things were happening in the outer reaches of the galaxy. Ships belonging to various factions began to disappear, seemingly swallowed by an unseen force. At first it was dismissed as the result of pirate raids or natural phenomena, but as the disappearances grew more frequent, rumors began to spread. Some believed that humanity was secretly involved. Others whispered that the Tyrann, the mysterious race that had remained neutral for so long, were testing their own power. The truth was elusive, but one thing was clear: something dark was rising in the farthest corners of the galaxy. Back on Earth, the leaders of humanity were in constant communication, though no one outside their inner circle knew what they were truly planning. The Human Federation's military forces, once part of the Council's peacekeeping force, were now operating independently, and their fleets moved in ways that suggested something was being prepared, something grand. While the rest of the galaxy struggled to maintain order, humanity's actions seemed calculated, deliberate, and cold. It was clear now that their departure from the Galactic Council had not been an impulsive decision. It was part of a larger plan. In the heart of the galaxy, where the Council's headquarters once stood as a symbol of power, the remaining species were meeting in desperation. The Sci-Fi, the Kravlak, and the Vartok had all gathered to discuss what they could do to restore the Council to its former strength. But it was too late. The fractures were too deep. Old alliances were broken beyond repair, and fear had taken root. Without humanity, they were nothing more than a collection of weak and fractured species, unable to hold their ground against the rising tide of chaos. The situation continued to worsen. On the fringes of the galaxy, new factions began to emerge, taking advantage of the power vacuum left by humanity's withdrawal. Some were opportunistic pirates, while others were old empires looking to reclaim lost glory. The galaxy was becoming a battlefield, and the once untouchable peace was being replaced by endless conflict. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of hope, was now a relic of a forgotten era, and every system in the galaxy seemed to be teetering on the edge of collapse. Then, a new threat emerged, one that none of the factions had anticipated. Ships, unlike any seen before, began appearing at the edges of Council space. They were sleek, fast, and deadly. No one knew who they belonged to, but the ships were clearly not of any known species. They moved with precision, striking planets and installations with devastating speed, and then disappearing without a trace. These mysterious forces didn't take sides. They simply seemed to be watching, waiting for something. Their appearance only added to the tension in the galaxy, leaving everyone to wonder if they were connected to humanity's departure. Were these ships somehow part of the grand plan? Or were they the harbingers of something far more dangerous? In a surprise turn of events, the Galactic Council decided to send a small, elite force to investigate the mysterious ships. Their mission was simple: find out who was behind the attacks and stop them before they could do any more damage. But when the fleet arrived at the coordinates where the ships had last been seen, they found nothing. No debris, no signs of battle, just an eerie silence. The fleet scoured the region for days, but the ships remained elusive, as if they were a ghostly presence that vanished when you weren't looking. Meanwhile, on Earth, the situation was becoming more and more tense. The government and military were working feverishly, preparing for something they had been anticipating ever since the day humanity left the Council. There were whispers that the secret project humanity had been working on for years was nearing completion. No one knew exactly what it was, but the sheer scale of the operation suggested it was something enormous. Was humanity preparing to strike, or were they preparing to offer the galaxy a new kind of peace, a peace on their own terms? As the galaxy descended further into chaos, one thing became certain: humanity's withdrawal was only the beginning of a much larger plan. The rest of the galaxy may have thought they could survive without them, but in truth, humanity had always been the glue that held the galaxy together. Now, as the galaxy teetered on the edge of collapse, it became clear that humanity was no longer a protector of peace. They were the wild card, an unknown force, standing on the sidelines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And no one knew when that moment would come. The countdown had begun, and soon, the galaxy would realize just how far humanity was willing to go to reshape the future of the universe. The galaxy had plunged into further uncertainty as the aftershocks of humanity's departure from the Galactic Council spread across the stars. With each passing day, the old alliances began to unravel, and distrust seeped into every corner of space. The once mighty Galactic Council had been reduced to little more than a fractured shadow of its former self, its leaders squabbling over what little remained of their power. The Seraphi, the Vartok, and the Kravlak, all those who had once relied on the Council, now found themselves in a state of fear, confusion, and desperation. Without humanity's strength and influence, the galaxy seemed to be descending into an abyss of violence and instability. Rumors swirled of strange ships appearing on the outer rims of known space, ships that moved too fast and too quietly to be tracked, disappearing before anyone could engage them. No one knew who was behind these mysterious attacks. Some speculated that humanity had a hidden fleet, lurking in the shadows, preparing to take control. Others feared the Tyrann, whose sudden movements had unsettled the entire galaxy. Their ships had been spotted in various regions, but their motivations remained unclear. But whatever the truth, the attacks were intensifying, and the galaxy's fear of an all-out war grew with each passing day. On the homeworld of humanity, things were no less tense. Earth's leaders had kept their plans tightly under wraps, but the whispers were starting to grow louder. The Federation's military, now operating completely independent of the Galactic Council, was preparing for something big. No one knew what it was, but the sheer size of the operation suggested it was something far more significant than anyone could have anticipated. The Federation had begun to move its forces, and the fleets were not just patrolling, they were gathering. Ships, weapons, and technology were being mobilized in secret, preparing for a mission that seemed more ominous with each passing moment. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, but one thing was certain: humanity was no longer content to simply stand by and watch the chaos unfold. Meanwhile, the Council's remaining factions tried to regroup. The Sci-Fi sent out diplomatic envoys to other species, seeking to form new alliances, but it was a desperate and futile effort. No one trusted anyone anymore. The Kravlak were pushing for military dominance, hoping to seize as much territory as they could while the galaxy was still reeling from the shock of humanity's withdrawal. The Vartok, once known for their loyalty to the Council, were now openly defying the old order, claiming that they would no longer be bound by agreements made in a time before the galaxy's balance had shifted. The Council tried to reassert itself, but it was clear that its time had passed. The once proud organization, which had held the galaxy together for centuries, now found itself weak and divided. Every decision was met with resistance, every plan undermined by infighting and distrust. The few remaining members who still believed in the Council's purpose were powerless to stop the tide of chaos that was sweeping across the galaxy. Without humanity's guiding hand, the galaxy was on the brink of total collapse. But while the galaxy stumbled, humanity moved in silence. The Federation's fleets were not just a show of force. They were part of a larger plan. Slowly, humanity's leaders began to make their move. Small skirmishes were breaking out at the edge of Council space, and as these battles grew, more questions arose. Why were humanity's forces involved? And what was their ultimate goal? The truth seemed hidden in plain sight, but no one could put the pieces together. Then came the first undeniable clue. A ship, sleek and dark, appeared on the far side of the galaxy, near the fringes of the uncharted territories. It was unlike anything seen before, a giant, seemingly invulnerable craft, brimming with energy that no one could understand. The ship was human-made, unmistakably so, and it was heading toward an ancient, forgotten region of the galaxy known as the Intervalus Cluster, an area that had been shrouded in mystery for centuries. It was a region few dared to enter, where legends spoke of lost civilizations and powers that could alter the very fabric of space itself. Humanity had found something in the Intervalus Cluster that no one else knew about. And that discovery would change everything. As the ship made its journey toward the cluster, a sense of dread filled the galaxy. Speculation spread like wildfire. Was this humanity's secret weapon? Were they planning to use it to take control of the galaxy? Or were they preparing to reveal something even more terrifying? Something that could destroy everything in its path. The Terran, who had remained neutral for so long, suddenly found themselves on high alert. Their fleet moved toward the Intervalus Cluster, seemingly drawn to the same mystery. Other factions, too, began to take notice. The Kravlak and the Sci-Fi both dispatched their own ships to investigate the region, their motives unclear. All eyes turned to the ancient, forgotten part of space, where something immense was stirring. Humanity, for all its secrecy, had become the galaxy's greatest unknown. No one could predict what they would do next. Their motives were hidden, and their strength was undeniable. With every new revelation, the galaxy's fears grew. What had humanity discovered in the Intervalus Cluster? And what would happen when all the factions of the galaxy converged on it? It was a race against time, a race that would determine the fate of the galaxy. And as the fleets of the galaxy's remaining factions moved toward the cluster, one final question loomed over everything. Was humanity truly preparing to save the galaxy from the chaos it had unleashed, or were they preparing to reshape the galaxy in their own image and let the rest of the universe burn? No one knew the answer, but the next few days would reveal whether the galaxy had any hope of survival, or whether humanity would be the catalyst that ended it all. The galaxy was on the precipice of destruction. As the vast fleets of different factions converged on the Intervelus cluster, the air crackled with tension, and the once stable systems now felt like fragile glass ready to shatter. Humanity's mysterious movements, shrouded in secrecy, had set the galaxy's most powerful species on edge. Every race, from the peaceful Sci-Fi to the aggressive Kravlak, felt the weight of an unknown future looming over them. The massive human-made ship that had entered the Intervelus cluster was not just a show of force. It was the key to understanding what humanity had been quietly preparing for all these years. For weeks, it had been the focus of intense scrutiny, its trajectory carefully monitored by every faction in the galaxy. What had humanity uncovered in the ancient cluster of forgotten worlds? What was this force that had drawn the Terran, the Vartok, and the Sci-Fi to the same place? The answer, though, was far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone had expected. As the fleets of the galaxy drew closer, the strange energy emanating from the heart of the Intervelus cluster began to pulse in waves, affecting everything in its vicinity. Sensors began to malfunction, ships lost communication, and a sense of unease spread among the fleets. No one could understand the energy source, but its pull was undeniable. It felt as though the cluster itself was alive, and the very fabric of space and time seemed to bend in its presence. Humanity, with its enigmatic silence, had reached the heart of this ancient power first. The ship, which had been the focal point of the galaxy's anxieties, came to a stop just outside the central anomaly, its sleek silhouette casting a long shadow over the surrounding space. The Federation's fleet remained in place, watching the phenomenon with a mix of awe and fear. But the true nature of what humanity had uncovered still remained a mystery. Back in the galaxy's capitals, whispers filled the air. The Vartok, who had once hoped to dominate the now crumbling council, feared that humanity was about to make a move that would change the balance of power forever. Their ships, armed and ready, hovered near the cluster, waiting for a signal, ready to strike if necessary. The Sci-Fi, though desperate to maintain peace, were growing more anxious by the minute. Without the protection of the Galactic Council, they had no way of knowing what would happen next. Were they allies of humanity, or were they about to become pawns in a game they hadn't even known was being played? But the real game was not yet even fully revealed. The Terran, the mysterious and enigmatic species, were the first to act. Their ships had been seen near the cluster, and for reasons that no one could explain, they'd made the decision to engage. The Terran's ships were known for their quiet movements, almost ghostly in their precision. But this time, their actions were anything but silent. The Terran warships sent out an immediate broadcast, demanding that humanity's forces stop their advance and leave the area. The Terran had always been cautious, slow to act and reluctant to involve themselves in galactic politics. But now they were putting all their weight behind this strange energy source, a force they did not fully understand but clearly feared. The human fleet did not respond. Instead, the ship at the heart of the Intervelus cluster began to send out its own signals, a strange and ancient frequency that no one in the galaxy could comprehend. The sound was not just a signal, it was a call, a beckoning cry to something far beyond the current understanding of the known galaxy. A call to forces that had been dormant for millennia, forces that humanity had awakened. The presence of the Terran, the Vartok, the Sci-Fi, and the Kravlak fleets all combined in a tangled mess of threats, diplomacy, and military might. But it was the human ship at the center that commanded attention. In that moment, the true nature of humanity's plan began to unfold. The Federation's highest command, the ones behind the scenes who had orchestrated humanity's exit from the Galactic Council, had been preparing for a moment like this for decades. The anomaly in the Intervelus cluster was not just a lost artifact or an ancient weapon. It was a gateway to an untapped power that lay beyond the known universe, waiting to be unleashed. Humanity had uncovered it, and they had learned how to harness it. This power, ancient and unknown to any other species, could rewrite the very laws of the galaxy. It could tear down the old order and allow humanity to build something new, something far beyond the fragile peace the Galactic Council had tried and failed to protect. But as the human ship activated the gateway, something unexpected happened. The anomaly in the cluster didn't just respond to humanity's signal. It opened. A vast rift, swirling with energy and light, tore through space itself. The rift was like a wound in the universe, raw, bleeding with power, and impossible to ignore. The Tehran ships immediately pulled back, their fear palpable as they retreated from the rift. The Kravlak, whose ships had been poised for battle, hesitated, sensing that whatever this was, it was bigger than their ambitions. The Seraphi, caught between the desire for peace and the reality of what was unfolding, stood frozen in place, unable to make a decision. For a long, tense moment, there was silence. And then, from the rift itself, something emerged, an energy so pure, so overwhelming, that it seemed to distort the very fabric of reality around it. It was not a weapon, nor a ship, nor an army. It was something older, something that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to be released. Humanity had awakened a force that no one had ever expected. The galaxy was no longer their playground. It was now their battlefield. And the rules of the game had changed forever. As the energy continued to pulse and the rift expanded, humanity stood at the precipice of a new era. But the galaxy, caught in the crossfire of an ancient power and a new unstoppable force, had no idea what was about to happen. What had humanity uncovered in the Intervalis cluster? What had they unleashed? And more importantly, how far would humanity go to ensure that the galaxy would bend to their will? The answers were coming. Soon, but none of the factions could prepare for what was about to unfold. The galaxy's future no longer lay in the hands of the Galactic Council. It was humanity's to reshape, and their decision would decide whether the galaxy would rise from the ashes or burn beneath the weight of its own uncertainty.